Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Drop Pod episode 4. Keaton here, and I'm flying solo for this episode, simply due to scheduling issues. Once again, there's like 10 or 11 hours between Joe and I, so it's amazing that we managed to record as much content for the channel per week as we do. So yeah, 10 or 11 hour difference, kind of hard to really schedule extra things, but nonetheless, I shall be going through a couple of video game topics that happened this month. Unfortunately, not a lot happened this month, actually. We had the release of GTA 5 on PC, and mod support is slowly coming along as the days go on. People are working feverishly at their computers. Just recently, I think as of a few days ago, Steam announced that mod creators will be able to start selling their works via the Steam Workshop, which is pretty interesting. There are only so many details released so far, and I think it's only for Skyrim right now. And there's a lot of noise going on right now, so we'll probably come back to this in a future episode. I will say though that it is weird that Steam's percentage that they take from each sale on the Steam Workshop is 75%. That seems pretty high, and I realize that Steam's percentage also covers the original game, developers cut as well. But mod creators getting only 25% of each sale is very weird. That the Steam percentage is so low for mod creators, especially those that put a whole lot of time and effort into their mods. But nonetheless, we'll talk about that more in the future, I'm sure. So that's something to look forward to in a future episode. I mean, if we weren't only talking video games, there's also the Star Wars trailer that came out recently, the Batman vs Superman teaser. Those are pretty cool, but unfortunately we were talking video games and there wasn't much happening in video games, so we're gonna focus on something that actually happened very early on in the month, and that's Angry Joe versus Nintendo. A quick refresher for those who may have missed it or have forgotten. So a pretty famous YouTuber goes by the name Angry Joe. Some of you may have heard of him before. He released a video for Mario Party 10. I think it was like a let's play with his friends, and lo and behold, Nintendo claimed the video. In response, Angry Joe posted a response video that aired his grievances with the situation. He mentioned things like Nintendo should be happy that he's giving their products a free advertisement, and that the whole reason that he did this is to prove that Nintendo are out of touch with the way that the whole let's play culture and everything are moving forward, with Twitch and YouTube really gaining momentum in the video game industry. Before we go any further, it's probably a good idea to sort of go over how ad revenue works on YouTube. So let's say you make a video about a video game, a let's play if you will, and you put it on YouTube, and you're like, I want to make some money off of this, I want to monetize it. So what you do is you monetize it, you tell YouTube, put ads on it, and I will collect the ad revenue for this video, based on views and all of the other algorithms that go into gaining ad revenue. So what happens is you have this ad revenue. Now what YouTube does is they take 50%, and that is their cut. Now if you're part of a MCN or a network, which most large name YouTubers are, usually the cut is about 40% of the remaining ad revenue after YouTube has taken their cut. So usually what YouTubers end up with is that little sliver of the overall ad revenue pie, if you will. What's interesting is, for a long time, Nintendo's approach to this was to then say, oh, you made a video about one of our games, we're going to take that little remaining sliver that you have for ourselves. We're going to claim that this video is our property, so we deserve all that ad revenue for this video. A lot of people did not appreciate that approach. So what Nintendo did was alter their policy and introduced a partner program where YouTubers could either submit videos or their channel, Nintendo would approve them, and then Nintendo would then take a cut of the YouTubers' ad revenue. So basically the way it works is, first YouTube will take their part, which is 50%. The MCN will then take their 40% from the remaining 50%. And then on top of that, Nintendo will then take 40% of the remaining ad revenue from the YouTuber. So basically what happens is anytime a YouTuber wants to cover a Nintendo game, not only do they need to go through the partner program verification, but they also need to give 40% of the remaining ad revenue that they earn from every video and give it to Nintendo. So you're talking about a very, very small sliver of ad revenue after everyone else has taken their cut. Now, for smaller channels and channels who aren't very reliant on ad revenue and everything, it's not that big of a deal. But for people like Angry Joe, who make this their career, make this their living, their way of earning any sort of income in general, it's a pretty big deal. For many reasons. It's a lot more work than usual, and you know, you get far less money out of the whole endeavor in general, and that is something that I can sympathize with for anyone trying to do this in any sort of, like, you know, career-ish fashion, if you will. And I'll come back to this as how it affects Tengu Drop a little later. But so yeah, essentially what happened is, despite the fact that pretty much anyone who is in the business of making Let's Plays, whether you monetize them or not, or the people who watch Let's Plays, pretty much everyone knew this new partner program and what the circumstances revolved around, like what you had to do in order to put a Nintendo video on YouTube. Now, as far as I can understand, Angry Joe knew this and still continued to post his Mario Party 10 Let's Play video. And lo and behold, Nintendo did what they said they do. For people who did not go through their partner program, they completely claimed the video in some fashion. So as usual, once all that hit the internet, people started choosing sides, and insults were hurled and angry things were typed on keyboards, and it was a whole ordeal for a few days or so. And it does bring up some interesting points, and I feel like what happened here is, I feel like it was two entities with very different ideals clashing, and the unfortunate end result was very ugly and was blown, I think, way more out of proportion than necessary. But so this is a very interesting situation because technically Let's Players exist in this gray area, and without getting too much into the more specific and complicated areas of copyright, basically Let's Plays are usually categorized as a transformative piece of content, which means that they're taking pre-existing content but transforming it into something that they can call their own in certain respects. And yeah, so the way it's always seemed to work is there's been an unspoken understanding that Let's Players will take, you know, content from these publishers or developers, aka their video games, add their own commentary, their own spin, their own editing, whatever, and then, you know, they'll obviously link back to the original content so that that game can quote-unquote get free advertising. And that's sort of how it's always been up until now. But companies like Nintendo are starting to push back against that, and we're seeing sort of a reaction from people like Angry Joe, who are just like, whoa, wait, we've been doing it this way and now you want us to not do it that way? That's BS, you know? At least that's the way it's perceived by these people who have always done it one way and are not used to seeing someone else do it another way. Now, the thing to remember is that I don't think anybody was wrong in this situation. I think it's just a clash of different opinions, and yeah, that's pretty much it. The way I feel about it is, I totally sympathize with Angry Joe. What Nintendo are doing is pretty archaic in a way. It's forcing people to do more work than necessary for something that really doesn't feel like it should require that much work. And again, the fact that they take 40% of the remaining ad revenue from these content creators means there's far less incentive to even bother with joining Nintendo products, which is something that actually a lot of Let's Players and variety channels did. They just stopped covering Nintendo products because they just don't like the policy at all. And really, that's just the way that the YouTube sphere has been ever since this policy was introduced. So yeah, as someone who also does this kind of thing, it's obviously very unfortunate that Nintendo has taken this stand. It would be nice if they would reconsider. Like, if someone were to ask me what would be one good example you would give to Nintendo to have them reconsider, I would say Bayonetta. If you guys don't know, Nintendo specifically went out to Platinum Games, the developers of the original Bayonetta, and said, hey, we will help finance Bayonetta 2 so that the fans of Bayonetta 1 can get a sequel. And that's what they did. They helped finance the development of Bayonetta 2, and thus Bayonetta 2 is a Wii U exclusive. And that's really cool to see from Nintendo. However, I will argue that one of the major reasons that Bayonetta became the cult classic that it did was thanks to the internet. It was thanks to Let's Players. It was thanks to internet personalities really pushing for people to recognize Bayonetta as a quality title. I would say the same thing goes for things like Demon's Souls. Like, Demon's Souls came out to a murmur at best. You know, a lot of people didn't know what Demon's Souls was. It was a PlayStation 3 exclusive that only a few people knew about, but thanks to the internet, now the Souls series is one of the top selling franchises out there. I have to imagine. Bayonetta, I would say, is the same thing. For me personally, I would not have given Bayonetta as much attention as I would have on my own without having seen a lot of Let's Players or personalities that I follow on the internet covering Bayonetta's initial release. And what I saw from Bayonetta is what really made me intrigued with the title, and now I'm an even larger Platinum fan than I was before. Like, I was a Platinum fan technically back when they were Clover and they did things like freaking Okami. But Devil May Cry was never really my thing, but Bayonetta really reinvigorated my interest in the whole like 3D shoot 'em up, beat 'em up, whatever you want to call it, the spectacle fighter, if you will. So I would definitely say it was thanks to Let's Players and streamers that got me interested in Bayonetta. And the fact that Bayonetta 2 is on a platform with a publisher who is like, no, you cannot put footage of our games on the internet without our approval. It seems like a clash of ideas where the original concept of we're taking a cult classic and giving it another chance on our platform exclusively, but the origins that really made that cult classic happen are now being stifled because of copyright control, etc., etc. On the other hand, I have to say, as sympathetic as I am to, you know, the struggles of dealing with copyright issues, because Lord knows we deal with them enough as a channel of our own, at the end of the day, companies like Nintendo have the right to do that. They own the copyrights, they own all the rights to those products, and if they say, hey, we don't want you to use our content in this fashion, unfortunately, as much as we want to kick and scream, they're in the right to do so. Should they do it? Probably not. I mean, you know, it goes against a lot of what the internet in general has come to acknowledge about the whole Let's Play culture and whatnot. But, you know, it is in their rights entirely to say, this is our product and we want to control the message our way. And, you know, Let's Plays just don't fall into that category unless we get the say-so first. And the thing about Nintendo is they are able to do this. The sad thing is, as much as I understand where Angry Joe is trying to come from when he says things like, I'm giving your products a free advertisement, the reality is that Nintendo really doesn't need Let's Players' help. Like, Nintendo products, the first-party products, sell well regardless. And you can kind of see that in the way that Nintendo handles their products, the way that they price their products. Like, let's say the latest Mario game. You're gonna have to pay 50 or 60 bucks, however much Wii U titles are these days. You're gonna have to pay that much unless Nintendo themselves say, hey, we're having a little sale and you can get it for maybe $5 or $10 cheaper. But any other time, you're probably gonna have to pay full price for it because that's just what Nintendo does. And you know, as much as we would like to see like Steam quality sales for on the Nintendo front, they're just not having it. They just don't want to do that, and we have to respect that. We can't be like, I'm gonna pay $5 for the new Mario Brothers game, and I don't care what Nintendo thinks. That's what I'm gonna do. You know, it just doesn't work that way, and I think that's the unfortunate situation that we find ourselves in. It's progressive from Nintendo's standpoint, but very outdated when compared to the rest of the video game industry. But that is their choice, and we have to respect that. And you know, that is a really hard pill to swallow, but that is the reality of working in this gray area. Is at the end of the day, Let's Players are at the behest of publishers and developers, and you know, some of them just don't want to play ball. That's just the sad reality, and I think that's kind of where I stand on it. I can see it from both sides. I sympathize very much with Angry Joe, and I sympathize with every Let's Player out there that wants to do Nintendo games. I think we would love to do Nintendo games, but we are not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole until that policy is changed. You know, as I said it before, you know, this really affects people who do video game, like new media stuff on the internet as a living. You know, that really does hinder them because that's ad revenue removed. That's a lot more work than they need to do. But for a channel like us, who are, you know, much more of a passion project right now, who work out of pocket, you know, it doesn't technically affect us, but it still does. If you've noticed, currently we don't run any ads on our channel at all. And what happens is, if we want to do a Nintendo game and we don't want to monetize it, the fact is, Nintendo will still monetize the video. So they will still flag our content. They will say, hey, this is a Nintendo product. We're going to throw ads on that, and we're going to force you to watch those ads, and we're going to rake in all the ad revenue. And the thing with us is, we've always been adamant to, when we put ads on the channel eventually, we want to make sure that we're justified in doing that. And I can tell you from the, I don't know what, year and a half that we've been doing this, we have been content ID'd for some pretty silly crap. I cannot tell you the amount of times that we got flagged for bird sounds, alright? Bird sounds, that's right. Apparently there are people out there who go outside, record bird sounds, and then tell YouTube, alright, so if birds chirp in this certain fashion, that's probably the bird chirp that I recorded. So that means if a game designer who has spent like the last 4 years of their life programming this game, you know, on a shoestring budget, ends up using a sound file that has chirps that match enough to this database of bird chirping sounds. If the chirps sound like something that's in their database, that person who recorded the bird chirp says to YouTube, oh yeah, despite the context of this video, despite the fact that this developer probably spent 4 years of their life, probably lost a marriage to make their dream game, yeah, despite all of that, despite all the hard work that the people recording the video, adding their commentary and editing and whatnot to it, despite all of that hard work that other people did, the bird chirps are what matter the most. Give me the revenue. And that's how it works on YouTube, and it is really ridiculous, but that's just how it works. On YouTube's sphere, you're always guilty until proven innocent. And transitioning into the future, that could become a huge problem, not only for YouTube, but Nintendo as well. Now, as we mentioned, I think last month, YouTube are investing in their live streaming service a little more, and they're hopefully going to go up against Twitch in the future as a live stream competitor. Now, the problem I foresee is YouTube already has a huge climb ahead of it if it wants to even try and take any of Twitch's traffic away from them, because Twitch is pretty much a behemoth at this point, and YouTube's current copyright policies and the way that they handle copyright issues is not going to fly for live streaming. And I can tell you that if Nintendo continues to have this policy where they will claim anything Nintendo unless it goes through their official channels first, it ain't going to fly that well with YouTube's live stream service if it works the same way as it does on actual VODs or actual recorded videos. Now, I say that because if you look on Twitch, a very popular Nintendo game that a lot of big names play is Mario Kart. And the reason they play it is because it allows them to play with their fans, and it's also pretty fun to watch. So it's a very stream-friendly game. Now, the thing is that if every policy that YouTube and Nintendo currently have, if that translates into their live stream service as well, that could probably mean that no YouTube live streamer will ever do Mario Kart 10. And that could be a deal breaker for a lot of live streamers. Not to mention, there are also the false flags that YouTube often end up sending out into the internet. For example, Danny B has been a victim of just rampant automatic content IDs on YouTube, where music that he technically didn't even release yet, I think it was like for Crypto the Necrodancer, music that he was still working on was getting flagged on YouTube for copyright issues. So false flags are another thing that can really hinder YouTube as a live stream experience. And I feel like unless YouTube really take a look at their current policy and change it to better adapt to a an experience similar to Twitch, they will never be able to even come close to what Twitch is doing. Now, in Twitch's case, the way that they handle any kind of copyrighted content is, if anything it matches their database of copyrighted content in the VODs, what they'll do is they will mute those portions of the stream. Now, that only works for audio. I don't think there's been anything implemented for visual stuff, but nonetheless, that's about as far as Twitch goes with anything regarding copyright issues. Now, they obviously still have DMCA takedowns, but those are very rare, and those are only under circumstances where like people are playing games that are still under embargo or some situation like that. I think it's been a very long time since anything prolific has ever happened with the DMCA takedowns on Twitch's end, at least. And the same cannot be said about YouTube, where YouTube will pretty much DMCA anything without question, because again, in YouTube's sphere, every content creator is guilty until proven innocent, and that's understandable. YouTube gets a ridiculous amount. I can't even fathom the amount of videos they get per day, per hour even. They get a lot of content, and there's no damn way that they can monitor all of that. So I understand the need for YouTube's copyright policy. The unfortunate thing is that it is very susceptible to abuse, and it is often abused, and all of those copyright issues are not gonna fly in the live stream culture, or you know, whatever you want to call it. So going forward, it's going to be very interesting to see the way that YouTube and Nintendo especially approach how copyrighted content and all of these gray areas are handled when we eventually reach that point, because it seems like something's gonna have to give, like something's gonna have to change, and I honestly can't tell you what would be the compromise. Obviously Nintendo want to control part of the message. They really want to make sure that if they're okaying a Mario game or a Pokemon game, you know, they probably don't want people cursing, shouting racist slurs over their content. It probably doesn't reflect very well on the product or the company. So I can understand their approach to the whole internet sphere, especially because troll culture is such a thing these days. I don't know if that really factors into the approach, but nonetheless, you know, it's something to think about. But I guess, you know, in terms of like, you know, Angry Joe's whole spiel about, you know, free advertisement, I would say, you know, as much fun as Nintendo games are, I would say focus your energy on people, companies that will appreciate your free advertisement. You know, as much as it would be great to cover a Nintendo game, maybe cover an indie game that takes from Nintendo and celebrates Nintendo games, but what it was done in a 4-year span on a shoestring budget by a guy in his basement. I don't know, you know, I feel like that's more progressive than, you know, sitting in the corner and looking at Nintendo and being like, why are you being so stubborn? You know, why don't you get with the times? You know, I feel like that is wasted breath, and you know, you could use that energy to put it towards someone who will actually appreciate all the hard work and dedication that you put to your content. I mean, you know, there was something that was mentioned by Angry Joe, and I think even Jim Sterling backed it up, in that Nintendo will often send out press packets, you know, of videos and imagery to use in coverage of their games, and even that stuff has been flagged on YouTube by Nintendo. So if that's the case, man, I would just be like, you know what, Nintendo, you got some things to work out. We'll come back to you when you're finally sorted it all out. If you don't sort it all out, then, you know, the internet will have to be forced to look at, you know, things made by the corporate big wigs or head honchos, and you know, the rest of the world will continue to keep moving forward. You know, the indie scene is blowing up. AAAs are, you know, they have their place, but indie scene and, you know, other projects, other passion projects are becoming more prominent in the internet world, and there are a lot of things that Let's Players could be covering. If Nintendo doesn't want to get on that bandwagon, they can just, you know, continue at their own pace, and we'll continue to do everything. We'll continue to progress this new media forward, and we'll probably all have a good time, hopefully, fingers crossed. In summary, I guess the thing that really sparks this sort of uproar, I think there is this ever-growing fear that the gray area will soon become dictated by the publishers or like the PR people or whoever is in charge. You know, I think there is a fear that eventually Let's Players are going to lose their freedom to do what they want with the content in the way that they want to do it. You know, I don't think we're ever going to reach that point. I feel that it's going to go towards the Let's Players in the future, because I feel like Let's Players and all this new media stuff is the future of video game coverage. Like, when I talk to people who are into video games, like, they're looking for Let's Plays and more video content. They're not looking to read like a 10-paragraph essay about whether or not this game is good. I think people would rather not see that. They'd rather just see the game as it is being played, and then, you know, make their own assessment from that. So as much as this may seem like a pretty dark time, I guess, for some Let's Players, with Nintendo being as adamant as they are, I don't think this will continue as a trend. At least I hope not, because that would really hinder a lot of the progress, I think, that games coverage and video games in general, and the way that the whole relationship between developer and fan and, you know, all the connections in between. I think that would be a really huge step back if those connections started getting severed for a more official approach to the whole concept, you know. But yeah, I think I've talked about copyright issues and whatnots about as far as I possibly can. So I think that'll do it for this episode of the Drop Pod. As usual, you know, I would love to hear what you guys think about the whole issue yourself. I guess if you had to pick a side, which side would you side with? Or are you kind of in the middle? Or, you know, if you guys have any other topics of discussion you would like to see us talk about in the future, or, you know, have any questions that you want to hear us tackle, I don't know, anything on your mind. So, you know, be sure to leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. We would really appreciate it. Even if you have opinions about how we can, I don't know, improve the Drop Pod, leave them in the comment section. But yeah, I think I've been blabbering long enough, so we'll call it there. Thank you everyone for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed the copyright talk. I'm sure it wasn't the most riveting of things to talk about, but again, not much happened this month, unfortunately. There were a few rumblings, but, you know, nothing really significant happened this month that we could really talk about. So yeah, we talked about copyright. Sorry. But to all of you who managed to listen this far, you guys are troopers, and I appreciate you guys listening. Hopefully next month Joe will be able to join me, and we'll be able to talk about something a little bit more exciting, or we'll just try to find something exciting to talk about. But yeah, this has been the Drop Pod episode 4. Once again, thank you to everyone who has listened, and also thank you to everyone who has watched and supported our content for the month. You guys are always awesome, and hello to all the new subscribers for the month. Hope you guys are enjoying the content as well. Usually we don't bore you to death with copyright talk. But anyway, until next time, take care of yourselves. Bye.